What is the one story you want to tell that you can never fit into a conversation? My dad is an OBGYN. He once got called by the local zoo to perform an emergency C-section on one of their gorillas. My mom has the baby gorilla's picture on the mantle with our baby picture. I went to the Grand Canyon years ago with my parents. A couple of stops and we get out at a lookout where there is only us and this biker couple. She was sitting on the edge of the canyon with something in her hand, and he was videotaping her. We had to walk past them to get to a trail that led into the canyon. It didn't take me and my dad long to see what the couple was doing, so we stopped and tried to give them space, but my mom kept walking. The woman dumped something into the canyon, and at the same time a wind blew out of the canyon and at my mom. The biker couple watched what they had dumped out fly into my mom's face. It turns out that it was the ashes of her brother, and his last request was to have his ashes spread at the Grand Canyon. What followed is the most awkward 10 minutes of my life as they talked to my mom about the departed. At the end of the conversation the lady says, "Don't feel bad about it. He loved to meet new people." My mom responds, "Well, it was nice to meet you and your brother as well." I think I've shared this on another sub before, but I made Alec Baldwin laugh. It was Halloween, and I was in New York City, and my office was near the W4th Street station, which is on 6th Avenue, where they do the massive Halloween parade every year. I was trying to rush to the station before the parade started, so I could get home and avoid the craziness. I was heading down Bleecker and already there are tons of people dressed up on their way to the parade. As I'm speed walking down the street, I get into an awkward shuffle with someone heading the opposite direction. You know, where you both go the same direction at the same time, then try to go the other direction, but you basically just keep blocking each other by accident. I look up, and the person I'm doing this awkward shuffle dance with is Alec Baldwin. I normally don't think so quickly on my feet, and I realize I pretty much peaked in this moment, but I blurt out, "That's a great Alec Baldwin costume," and he laughed. My drunk crazy uncle showed up in an Action Bronson episode about the South Bronx. They filmed him drinking beer out of a straw, hidden in his jacket. In 2011 I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was 4 days before my 17th birthday. When I got home from the hospital that day, I wanted to put myself in a better mood. So I watched Rush Hour, and then I watched Rush Hour 2, and then Rush Hour 3. Fast forward to a couple months ago, I volunteered at a high profile event that had a shit ton of celebrities. We weren't allowed to fraternize with the celebs and ask for pictures and autographs and stuff, but there was one celeb that I needed to slightly break that rule for. At the end of the event, I made sure to be near the exit and wait there for Detective James Carter himself. I approached him, I shook his hand, and walked him out, while explaining to him that Rush Hour got me through one of the worst days of my life so far, and it made me smile during a time that I had no business smiling in. He stopped dead in his tracks, looked at me, and thanked me for telling him. He then gave me a hug before sincerely wishing the best for me and leaving the event. And that's what happened when I met Chris Tucker. I live in Maine in the same town as Stephen King. I have worked at several stores when I was younger, such as Home Depot and Walmart. He has come in sometimes. He recognized me when I worked at Home Depot from Walmart and said, "You really need to stop following me." Jokingly, of course. He was a pretty cool dude. Bought some screws and lumber. I was held hostage in Iraq for over 2.5 years. I was the only person released alive out of the 5 of us. I did an AMA about it once. Fitting that into a conversation is interesting. So the wife loves Disney and I love the Philadelphia Flyers. I took her to Disney to propose and everything's magical. The next day was my birthday and we are waiting in line when the woman in front notices my Flyers hat and says, "Oh, you're a Flyers fan?" I said yeah as I look at her husband and it's Danny Breer. So I got to ride the Tower of Terror with one of my heroes. Also we had nearly identical outfits on. Also it was Danny's birthday too. Edit. I've only ever gotten to tell this story to family. No one else cares enough about hockey to know who I'm talking about. This past summer me and 2 of my friends were passing the time by just walking in a creek. We are in high school, so we had nothing better to do. As we're walking we hear what we thought to be a little kid whining. The creek wound around an elementary school, so we thought it might be some daycare going on. We continue to walk down the creek, which then led us to a slow flowing river about waist deep. We swim down it having a good time when we hear the same sound of the kid again, only it sounds less than 5 meters away, and it's definitely not a child. I look along the bank and spot a fawn baby deer stuck in some tree roots that were dangling over the bank. I don't know how long it had been stuck there, but its front left and both back legs were stuck in the roots. I ask one of my friends to hold my bag, and I head over to the deer. It had to have been stuck there for a decent while because it didn't seem to struggle when I got close, presumably cause it was too tired to. I go over and lift the fawn up and carry him over to a less steep bank where he can make his way into the tree line surrounding the river. I don't know what happened to it after that, but I'm hoping it found its mama. My 50-year-old mother is one of the best 2048 players in the world. Her high score is somewhere in the millions, and she doesn't see it as a big deal. But I googled it, and she's like top 5 in the country. Nobody other than myself is interested in this, so I don't get many opportunities to brag on her behalf. One time me and my brother were being signed up by my parents to do a Rugrats Campbell soup commercial. My parents were both in chairs in front of this desk talking to a man, and I was sitting leaning against the wall by the door behind them. Then a hand comes through the door and clamps around my mouth and I get dragged out of the room. He's dragging me down the hall and I'm trying to kick and scream, but he's this 6'2" white guy with a long beard and I can't budge or make a noise past his hand. Then halfway down the hallway in the lobby the receptionist looks up at us and he lets me go. I run back to the room and sit on the floor between my parents' chairs. The guy comes in again and whispers something to the man my parents are talking to and leaves. It still makes me angry today because when I told them this story they didn't believe me. I was 5. I'm 27 now and now they believe me. It was so traumatizing I still remember it. I worked at a banking call center for a short time. During training one of the things they warned me about was a guy they called the sneezer. He would call in and only wanted to talk to women. He'd pretend to be opening up an account, but the whole time be acting like he really needed to sneeze. He wanted the female representative to tell him to let it go, and that it was okay to do it. Clearly being a perv, and jerking off to a female voice. I had been on the phones a while before I ever got him. He called me and tried that sheet with me, but I stayed on subject, except to tell him to look up at the light, and if he had so much difficulty sneezing he might need a doctor, and set up an account. Most reps weren't able to get that far, after which he was getting nasty and saying lewd things. After a warning and him continuing I hung up. My coworker that sat next to me got a call a few hours later and almost immediately hung up. Turns to me and says she got the sneezer. I tell her what happened to me and we laugh it off. A few more hours goes by and she gets him again and I get to listen in a bit cause I'm on my break. This time my coworker has a plan. She tells him to relax, close his eyes, take a deep breath. At this point you can tell he's loving it and picture his grandmother busting in. I hear a lot of cussing through her headphones and she hangs up. 7 years ago, I, 18 at the time, was out to dinner with boyfriend's extended family and got stuck in a bathroom stall. Had a doorknob, not a latch. I panicked and kicked that sheet off. I came out the bathroom, calmly sat down at our table, and said nothing. I felt guilty for breaking the door, but also surprised at my ability to do so. This one is so weird I don't think anybody will believe me, but I'll tell my tale anyway. About 6 years ago I was working in fast food. I was training 16 new employees at a brand new location with no other fast food spots for 30 minutes around. It was hell. I'd regularly work 16-hour days with only a 30-minute break thrown in there. The new hires were being trained by 2 other experienced crew members and myself, so most of the work was on us 3. I was hating life. One day I took my lunch out in the lobby, which don't usually do. I sat alone until an old man asked if he could share my table. We talked for a bit. He noticed my name tag and says Alijo. That's my name too. Alijo Thedek. I tell him how strange. That's my full name too. All of a sudden he gets serious and tells me save a dime for every dollar I make. That it'd be good to have in case of an emergency or difficult situation. He's been doing it since he was 20 and it helped him when he had to take time away from work. We say goodbye and I get back to work, but thought about him all day. I took that advice, and when I got testicular cancer a few years later and had to take leave from work, I had a nice savings to fall on. Maybe he was future me watching out for me. I used to deliver pizzas. I roll up to this one house, walls to the door, have a knock and start waiting, when this cicada starts dive bombing me, kamikaze style, with rage. Like I could almost hear it screaming at me. This went on for the several minutes that my customer wasn't answering the door, and then the cicada conveniently flew away right as the door popped up. So I'm sitting there stressed, kind of in shock with a pizza in my hand, and tell the customer what happened for some reason. They don't care. Whatever. I walk back to my car, get in. The cicada is in my car, attacks me again. One of the most surreal exchanges with nature I've yet encountered. I met the bassist from Tool once. Super nice guy. The whole experience was great until I went home and told my family, hey guys, I think I met someone famous today. Do you know the band Tool? Family, no way you met someone from Tool? Who? What did you say? Me. I asked him if his band was pretty popular. They mock me to this day. I got done with my bartending shift in a college town over a summer and headed over to my friend's house for after bar. Everything in this town was walking distance, and since it was summer it was fairly quiet night at around 4 AM as I'm walking home from the after bar by myself. Suddenly, a couple of guys come up behind me, completely wasted riding a tandem bike. These guys were barely keeping this thing on the street when a car drove by, slowed down, and a girl from the back window of the car leans out and flashes her tits at them. The guys crashed their tandem bike into a curb in a fantastically comical way, and the car sped off. I miss small college town life. My dad was good friends with David Bowie for a while. My mum's best friend was having potentially life-ending surgery, open heart for the third time due to Marfan's disease. So my dad told Bowie that she was a big fan. He ended up recording a video for her wishing her luck, and she still watches it from time to time. She's having another surgery on Tuesday. Two good friends of mine from medical school found out they were half sisters after they both separately sent in kids to 23andMe. The kicker is that the sperm donor was also a medical student. My girlfriend and I were at 7-Eleven and Dog the Bounty Hunter was there. My girl drives a smart car, which is adorable in its own right, but as we came out of 7-Eleven to leave, Dog held the door for us, and then when we were getting in the car he said, "That's one cute car." My girlfriend had no idea who Dog was until I told her. Then she couldn't stop giggling that one of the most aggressive bounty hunters out there thought her car was cute. When I was about 8 years old, I was playing outside with a friend and her little brother, 2 or 3Y. Oh. My friend was slowly riding my bike on the sidewalk, and I was walking besides her, but her brother insisted on riding his tricycle out the middle of the road. It was a dead end without movement. There's a funeral home nearby that often left their hearse parked on that street. Little guy was right behind the hearse when it suddenly starts moving backwards. I quickly pulled him out of his tricycle as he was about to get ran over. It still creeps me out how the kid could have died that day by the same hearse that would have taken him to his funeral. Sometimes I see him on the street and wonder if he remembers he almost died that day. Edit. Typo. One time I was on the bus toward the back, but in front of the second door in the back. As we're going down the road I notice the guy in the seat crossed the aisle is sitting there jerking off. I mean, the whole thing was out, and he was going to town. There was a mom and her kids 2 seats in the front sideways facing seats, and I'm pretty sure he was looking at the kids. Just as I notice the bus pulls up to a stop and the mom and her kids who were probably around 7 to 5 range get up to exit out the back doors. I bolt to my feet and block their way down the aisle and yell, "You need to go out the front door." The poor mom looks at me and starts to protest, but I just make myself big to block their way and start herding them to the front door. As she was exiting the bus I tried to quietly tell her what was going on, but she was pretty mad at me and didn't let me get close enough to say anything. I think about this oft. I was probably their villain of the day and I actually might have saved them from real harm. I was going to an on-field concert after a baseball game. So once the game was finished a stream of people, myself included, are going down the stairs to reach the field in trance. I start hearing shouting and a scream behind me on the stairs. I stopped and turned around to see what was happening, and somehow I caught the arm of a woman who had been falling down the stairs, the cause of the commotion. I hauled her to her feet and we sort of just stared at each other for a moment before continuing down the stairs. I will never know how this happened so perfectly, and it will never happen again. But damn, I felt like a ninja.